All right, today we're diving into the economy of Meghalaya, a state in northeast India. And this isn't just going to be a story about numbers and charts. It's a really fascinating look at a place with a truly unique social fabric and, well, a pretty complex economic puzzle that we're going to try and unpack together.
So let me just throw this question out there because it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. What if a state's greatest strength was also intrinsically linked to its biggest economic challenge? Think about that for a second. It's a real paradox, right? This idea that the best thing a place has going for it could also be tied up in its biggest struggle. Keep that in mind because we're going to see it pop up over and over again.
Okay, first up, a number that is, wow, genuinely impressive, 60.9%. Now, what is that? That's the percentage of women in Meghalaya who are in the labor force. It's one of the highest in the entire country, and it's a huge, huge social strength. But, and this is a big but, that's only half the story.
Because here's the other side of that coin, 2.1%. That's the state's average real economic growth over a whole decade. I mean, that is just incredibly low. So you see the tension, right? You've got this super engaged population, especially women, ready to work, but the economy itself is just kind of sputtering. And that right there is the core puzzle we're digging into.
So to really get a grip on this economic picture, you can't just look at the numbers. You've got to start with the people. Meghalaya's social and demographic setup, it's just not like anywhere else in India, really. And it's absolutely fundamental to understanding everything else.
Okay, so first things first, let's get our bearings. Where are we talking about? We're in North India, in a state with about 3.3 million people. You've probably heard about Meghalaya's stunning natural beauty, right? But believe me, its demographic profile is just as remarkable.
And when you look at the numbers, they're really striking, mainly because they're just so different from the all-India average. I mean, get this, a staggering 86% of the population is tribal. Almost 80% live in rural areas. And then there's this thing called the dependency ratio. Look at that, 80.1%. Basically, that just means for every person of working age, there are way more dependents, kids, elderly folks, than you see in the rest of the country.
And this brings us right back to one of the state's biggest strengths. When you look at the gender metrics, Meghalaya is just knocking it out of the park compared to the national average. The sex ratio is much healthier, and yeah, there's that female labor participation rate again. It's in a completely different league. We're talking more than 20 percentage points higher. That's a huge deal. But here's where the other shoe drops. Even with all those women in the workforce, the state's overall unemployment rate is almost double the national average. So what does that tell you? It tells you people are ready and willing to work. The desire is there. The problem is the jobs just aren't.
Okay, so how does this unique social picture actually connect to the economy on the ground? Well, like we've been saying, it is a story of major contrasts. You've got growth in some pockets, but some really worrying gaps in others. And this chart really just lays the core problem bare. For a whole decade, Meghalaya's economy grew on average at just 2.1%. For perspective, the rest of India was chugging along at 5.6%. So we're talking less than half the national pace. That's not just a blip, that's a serious long-term lag.
And you know, that slow growth isn't just an abstract number. It hits people directly in their wallets. The average income per person in Meghalaya is almost a third lower than the national average. That's the real-world consequence of that growth gap we were just looking at.
So what exactly is this economy made of? Well, it is all about the services sector. I mean, overwhelmingly so. It makes up almost 60% of the entire economy. Agriculture and industry, they're way, way behind. Okay, but now we get to what might be the most shocking contrast of all. Check this out. The services and agriculture sectors, they're growing, which is good. But the industrial sector, it's not just stuck in neutral. It is actively shrinking. For 10 years, it's been contracting by an average of 2.7% every single year. Think about that. The one part of the economy that could create a ton of those much-needed manufacturing jobs is actually going backwards.
Oh, and by the way, a quick note. You might have seen that term GSVA on the last couple of slides. Don't let it throw you. It just stands for gross state value added. It's basically just a fancy way of measuring the total value that each part of the economy, agriculture, industry, services, is producing. All right, so you've got slow growth and a shrinking industrial base. Unsurprisingly, that has some pretty big consequences for the state's finances. So let's peek at the government's books, shall we?
And the first thing that jumps out is the debt. The state's public debt is sitting at 44.1% of its entire economy. Now, that is a pretty hefty number, a real burden. And then you've got the fiscal deficit. It's at 4.4%. And what that means, in simple terms, is that the government is spending more money than it's bringing in. It's running in the red, and it's doing so at a higher rate than the typical Indian state.
Okay, this table kind of puts it all together. You can see the debt and the deficit are both way higher than the median state. But then look at the bottom two rows. Here's another one of those paradoxes. Meghalaya has a revenue surplus, and its total revenue is a massive 41.3% of its economy. That's nearly triple the median. So wait a minute, how on earth is that possible? How can a state with a slow-growing economy be bringing in so much revenue?
Well, the answer lies in the final and maybe the most crucial piece of this whole economic puzzle, and that is the role of the central government. So here's how it works. The Indian Constitution has this principle built right in. The central government collects all these taxes from across the country, and a chunk of that money gets shared back with the states. It's a divisible pool. And every 5 years, a body called the Finance Commission figures out who gets what slice of the pie. And as you can see right here, Meghalaya's recommended slice of that pie has been getting bigger. From the 14th to the 15th Finance Commission, its share went up. And that, of course, means a bigger, more reliable stream of money flowing into the state's coffers. And it's not just the tax share. It's the same exact story with something else called grants in aid. Meghalaya's share of these grants also saw a huge jump. It practically doubled. So you put these two things together, the growing tax share and the growing grants, and that is the lifeline. That's how you get that surprisingly high revenue figure we were puzzling over a minute ago. And this grant money isn't just one big check. Think of it more like a diversified support system. There are specific grants for specific things. Money to help cover revenue gaps, money for local governments, funds for disaster management, and even targeted grants to boost important sectors like health and education. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that central paradox. On one hand, Meghalaya has this incredible social asset, a highly engaged female workforce. It's a huge strength. But on the other hand, it's dealing with slow growth and a deep reliance on money from the central government. So the big, crucial question for the future is, can the state figure out how to leverage that amazing social strength to build a more dynamic, more self-reliant economy? An economy that can finally create enough jobs for all the people who are so ready to work. That right there is the challenge ahead.